Can I open my eyes now?
You can open your eyes and look at this here chart that I
Dear
made.
Lord.
Sometime before the New York election, there was a talk of like something called like a Left-Nimby. And that got my gears going. I was like, Left-Nimby? Wait, so that implies the existence of a Right-Yimby and a Left-Yimby and a, So I made this chart, and I did my best to compile memes from all over the chart. And I was hoping you could, like, I don't know, fact check the chart, plus also give me some more information about the different quadrants.
I can do my best. I'll admit a lot of these references might go over my head.
Okay.
I am painfully aware of being a millennial.
What is the NIMBY versus YIMBY divide?
Okay, yeah, this is probably the easiest one to define. NIMBY stands for not in my backyard, and it's a pretty broad stance of like we're very cautious and even anti sort of change happening in neighborhoods. And so, you'll see new housing developments or even, other things like playgrounds and other kind of, development projects in a city, seeing a lot of opposition by people who are, again, very cautious, very anxious about having their neighbors.
Boomers! It's all boomers. This is look again.
You're kind of like my translator here.
All of my knowledge. I'll be your Zoomer translator. You can do a millennial PR thing. I'll translate. It seems like these guys are boomers, right?
Yeah, I think if you were to sort of take a sample size of that sort of group, it would what is it? Skew a lot older.
Skews older.
Skews older for sure, and I think
right.
that to some extent makes sense. I think the older you get, the more conservative you are about changes, and you don't want to. I mean, there's a lot of nostalgia around the neighborhood you grew up in, seeing a change. And I will say, like, it might surprise some viewers, but I do personally find myself like bouncing all around these quadrants because I do have sympathies with like. Especially the rate of change that's happened in a lot of Canadian municipalities.
Right.
It is like astonishing, and there are unforeseen consequences to that. So, I maybe it is a bit of my PR voice, but I think there's ways you can sort of still empathize with that perspective.
Okay.
But that's the NIMBY. It's sort of like, just generally speaking, we're very cautious and anxious and maybe in opposition to change happening in neighborhoods.
And so when I envision NIMBY, I'm envisioning... Like, my perspective on NIMBY was the Right-Nimby, right? So, why don't we start there?
Sure, yes.
This is kind of my perception of, when I hear NIMBY, I'm imagining, his stereotype is kind of like a racist boomer, right? It's like, I don't want young people, I don't want these young urban youth in my backyard. I don't want them building this big building, and there's going to be all these hooligans running around, and, these are all, like, kind of dog whistles. So that's kind of my impression. I have Donald Trump here because in New York, he was advocating against, I think, like, low-income housing being built in his area to protect his property value. And I also think this is a big part of Right-Nimbyism, is, like, you have property value and you want to increase it, right?
I mean, I was kind of thinking about this earlier, but like for me, Right-Nimbyism, it doesn't track neatly with like right-wing politics per se. I think maybe sort of like culture, like social conservatism would be the most sort of aligned one. But my view of it is I actually really consider it like a privileged NIMBYism. You're anti-change because you own property, and so you maybe sort of not inadvertently, your ulterior motive is you want to see your property values grow, and so keeping your neighborhood exclusive and kind of pristine is sort of your intentions there. Or you're just generally like you're a homeowner and you just don't want to see the place change too much. You're advocating for no change from a very like privileged position, and I think that's what differentiates sort of this version of NIMBYism from the other version of NIMBYism that I think we'll get into.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So I won't live in a pod designed to isolate me and strip me of my sense of self, but then they see the suburbs and they're like, oh wow, so true.
This is the real.
Because like the thing that does intersect with right-wing politics is like they want you to. Have you heard of this? They want you to live in a pod and eat bugs, and they want you in a small little condo.
Right. And I can appreciate the irony of like.
You should one is the identical suburban house and a 2-hour commute.
Another version of it's interesting, and you said you're looking for a little bit of feedback on this chart. I actually would put this right in the middle because I think there's a lot of overlap with leftist NIMBYism too, which is very skeptical of market forces that would create a smaller and smaller unit.
Okay,
And so there is this sort of sense of like, oh, like if you just leave it all to the private sector, your affordable housing will just be these sort of micro unit pods that are really unlivable or whatnot.
I'm gonna put this closer to the middle of the NIMBY thing.
Sure,
but I'm gonna make it lean right, because I do think there's the right wing narrative of like live in the pod, eat the bugs. They want you, and like that's kind of playing into. That's why let's want slightly on the right.
100%, and I think like to some extent there is a very strong contingent of NIMBYism that is really form based. It is about the type of structures we want our society to live in.
Okay,
and so I think the idea of having apartments really it's almost like a cultural backlash. Like our identity is wrapped up in the home with the yard and the driveway.
The land.
Yes. And so it is, I think, to your point, it is a very traditionalist view of, a form of structures.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Let's keep going here.
Sure thing, yeah.
I have this like not a willing host for like a windmill. Does that track? You would expect someone with left-wing politics to be in favor of green energy, yeah?
You would, though I have seen other examples.
Okay, all right.
It does get messy.
Yeah.
Because there is also like a very leftist environmentalist sort of NIMBYism that is, maybe I'm putting it a little uncharitably, but I think it's more about the aesthetics of environmentalism without the kind of the pragmatism of it.
Okay.
So yes, in theory, a windmill would be generating clean energy and reducing our carbon footprint, but it's being put in a natural area. Maybe there was an ecosystem there, and I think it really brushes up against sort of. So you'll find some sort of people who would be progressive.
I think it's going to be very interesting when we get to the Left-Nimby. I've heard a lot about these guys. It seems like no one likes them. So I have some NIMBY centrism here.
Okay.
Cool. This is just like trying to stop a skyscraper. It doesn't have any ideology behind it, but like you could see like Left-Nimbys and Right-Nimbys coming together to like stop this. If it's like a luxury skyscraper, for example.
Yep.
And then no one wants backyard nuclear dump. Next door is next door a NIMBY thing?
I think it inadvertently has become a bit of a NIMBY thing.
Okay.
I think the roots of it, and I mean I guess this is kind of one of the potent sort of the fuel of NIMBYism often is that it is a force that brings neighbors together.
Interesting.
And I think that's a lot of the magnetism of movements like this. Is like you get to meet your neighbors for the first time and hold hands in opposition to stuff. And so I feel like and I'm not going to be the guy to say like, apps like this are a bad thing or that we shouldn't have communities that I think that's a wonderful thing. But we should be kind of cautious of the sort of the side effect that can have, which is creating exclusivity. It's like we've got our community and we're going to be very cautious about it.
And I'm a big community guy. And so I think that it's actually very important to have, a sense of, a religious community, a local community, an artistic community. All those things are very important to me. And so, locality and the people, like knowing the people in my physical proximity, that's a big part of being human.
Right.
And so I think NIMBYism does sort of speak to that. That's kind of why I wanted you on, because I knew you had a lot of like nuanced perspectives on all of them, and you weren't just going to rail against one side or the other. And my understanding is the Right-Nimby is very focused on, property value and keeping things of a certain class. And the Left-Nimby is focused on making sure, the character is preserved, but not necessarily in, a way for, property value to increase. But more for, gentrification. All these white yuppies are moving into an urban neighborhood and raising the price of everything and displacing people.
Totally. It's much more rooted in sort of a social justice kind of framework. And so I think you explained it quite perfectly there. I don't know if I have much to add there.
Okay. So so I have gentrification drives the color of communities. Because obviously, I guess in this frame, the people with money are white, right? And they're coming in and displacing people of color. And then this is a communist, and it's explaining why Left-Nimbyism should be justified, and it's just a huge wall of leftist text. And then there's this shriveled Wojak. I just want a house, please.
I can see where you're getting your memes from, but I think this one actually kind of speaks to me because you know, I do have sympathies for leftist NIMBYism.
Yes.
But I think one of my...
Kensington Market is leftist NIMBY.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think there's like, you know, kind of what I was alluding to earlier, like there are impacts, unintended consequences to neighborhoods changing very quickly. And I think there are people that are much more vulnerable to those changes than others are.
And you know what? Okay, I live in Kensington.
Yeah.
And I heard about the leftist NIMBYism that was going on in Kensington. I was like, this is kind of based. This is kind of like really cool.
Totally.
Like, like the community is getting together and being like, fuck you, you're not making this awesome building a Harry Potter Airbnb. No one wants that shit.
Yeah.
That's lame. We're going to get together to pool our funds and prevent you from doing that. I was like, that's kind of based. Is that not based?
Yes. I think like dig deep, there's a lot of like philosophies that are really radical and I think like collectivist and I think you know, really well intentioned. And I think the shortcomings, and I'm going to try to be as cautious as possible here, is in, you know, is in kind of the pragmatism of the ideas. Like, yes, it would be wonderful if we kind of over like a short period of time fundamentally reshaped our housing market into one that was not capitalism focused, like a Singaporean model. Is that like feasible? Like at all? I don't know. Like, I mean, if you kind of interrogate it seriously, I think that's where it starts to, you know, in my view, fall apart.
Well, I in reference to the Singaporean model, I think there's a lot of like in the younger generations, there's a lot of reassessing of how we do stuff. Like, you know, I've talked to a lot of Georgists, for example, there's a lot of like reconsidering about how we do things. We like are looking at like, you know, other countries and how they do land stuff, building stuff, and I feel like there is actually you might see something radically change within your lifetime about this.
And that's where I'm like my thinking is like, yeah, there's a long game we can play here around publicly owned housing, around non-market housing, and around like, you know, like property tax reform that frankly we should do and not lose sight of. It just won't happen, you know, at the pace that well, I don't know. For me, it's like this is a decades-long project,
I think you're right. I think it is a long-term strategy, unless we get a totalitarian leader in charge ASAP.
Is that a announcement for office?
No, not me. But I'll let you know. I'll let you know when there's like a totalitarian Georgist that comes in and starts changing everything.
I mean,
okay. So here's my conclusion so far. You're gonna see my opinion about this rapidly change, but I'm Left-Nimby just for Kensington Market, and then everything else can be develop as it will. I can be, but now I'm realizing that is literally what "not in my backyard" means, because it's my backyard.
You're right.
So now
okay. But no, I think there is like, in some cases, and I did a video on Kensington Market, and I really did kind of both sympathize and buy into the idea of like a Kensington Market community land trust, because here is a truly special neighborhood that has a very vulnerable population, and it would be both against that vulnerable population's interest, but I would say, like, broadly speaking, Toronto's interest to lose that neighborhood to a capitalist framework, because there's something going on there that's more special than just
so in my backyard I can justify it, but in your backyard, sorry, we're building 1 million condos.
Well, and here's what I'll respect though is about the Kensington Market Community Land Trust. I don't voice opinions too broadly, but you know, take all of this with a grain of salt. But I think what I respect about the Community Land Trust movement a lot more is that they're putting their money where their mouth is. They're literally buying these properties. And that is the hard work that it takes to take land out of the private sector. You gotta, like, acquire the properties. And so to me, that is, you know, a more pragmatic vision for how we build this sort of future. Like, I like to remind people, like, Hong Kong is a great example where there is a really large public housing market sector. It's like something like 50% of the housing is publicly owned, but the wait list is 10 to 12 years long, and there is a housing crisis still.
Bomb condos, not murals. This seems like an anarchist big thing. Like.
But totally in that same vein. And I think this is something, another sympathy I have with the leftist NIMBYs is, you know, kind of, I think I come back to like there are impacts and consequences to neighborhoods developing and changing rapidly, and there are groups that are much more vulnerable to that change, and there are groups that are, frankly, have a lot to gain from that change.
Right.
And so where I think the leftist NIMBYs have a great point is that, like, why are we building all of this housing in rental neighborhoods where the threat of displacement is very real, when, in North America, we have swaths and swaths of single-family, neighborhoods that are homeowners.
That's most of America, isn't it?
Most of America.
Yeah, you fly over America, you see just like an infinite amount of these things sprawling off forever.
Totally. Even in Vancouver, it's something like 80% of the land, or 80% of the residential land is single-family zone, or whatever, like detached housing. And so, if those areas were upzoned, like, not only would we get more housing, but those homeowners would get a windfall of money because their property values would be higher.
Interesting.
So I think that's kind of, one thing I don't know if it belongs on the chart or not, but I think it's a fair point the leftist NIMBYs make. It's like, hey, like, location kind of matters and vulnerability matters too.
Okay. Yeah, that's a very good point. Left-Nimbys, they oppose like luxury housing, because the idea, right, is like, you build this luxury housing and that just makes things worse for the residents. Like, does luxury housing help? Or like if you're making more things for rich people.
Right. And so this is admittedly a messy area where I think the research is, I mean, leaning towards one side, but still, I think is still being hotly debated, is like, what is the impact of market rate developments in more affordable neighborhoods. And so, I think on one hand, I think the leftist NIMBY perspective would be, hey, if you introduce, like market rate developments in Kensington Market, and the rents for that new development are much, much higher than the existing rents in that neighborhood.
Yes.
Are you, in fact, sort of influencing landlords in that neighborhood to then raise their rents, right? Like, do those new developments sort of induce gentrification? Then there are other, the maybe leftist YIMBY perspective is, well, actually, there's a lot of demand. Like, gentrification is happening under the surface anyways. Artists are moving into places that were formerly, more ethnically diverse neighborhoods, and then sort of the yuppies kind of find out that spot, and they're sort of all competing for the same space. The rents are going up anyways, and what that market rate development is really actually an indication of that demand, and having that built will actually absorb that demand rather than sort of influence the demand. Okay. So it's
complicated, but you said the data is sort of leaning towards the
YIMBY perspective on that one.
Okay. Cool. I have one more leftist NIMBY meme here.
Okay.
Valid criticism of San Francisco's housing policy, and then he's pointing the gun at objectively rich homeowners. But then jumping in front of the way is San Francisco Planning Commission and San Francisco Twitter leftists. So first of all, I have no idea what the fuck's going on with San Francisco, okay? I heard something like they have a huge population. They've like approved like 50 homes to be built over the next year or something. Which seems, to me, seems a little odd. Doesn't seem weird. But why would San Francisco Twitter leftists be like, I guess this is like a NIMBY jumping in front of the way, protecting like a Right-Nimby, because they're like teaming up. This is sort of like a horseshoe thing.
I don't know the specific politics of San Francisco, but I think this sort of tracks for a lot of like sort of NIMBY, YIMBY sort of discourse in cities around the world.
Yeah.
My one edit to this meme would be, I feel like in some ways that objectively rich homeowners are sort of grabbing the leftist NIMBY
and using this like,
like, a body shield.
Yeah, okay,
protect me,
interesting.
Because and I think we'll talk about this later, but you see increasingly these sort of coalitions forming.
We're gonna get to the horseshoe theory. We're gonna get to the horseshoe
there
theory.
Conveniently is a lot of overlap between sort of these sort of more traditionalist conservative NIMBYs that don't want poor people and don't want their neighborhood to change too much, and these leftist NIMBYs who also don't want the neighborhood to change too much because it might displace people.
Right.
And the unifying theme of all of that is we don't want the neighborhood to change too much.
Yeah, yeah.
There
Well,
could be consequences.
we will get to this later, but I when I was finding out about Left-Nimbys, I was seeing this Right-Nimby who retweets communists getting thrown out of helicopters, supporting like a communist who is also a NIMBY. So yeah. Okay.
It's messy real quick.
Okay, so we've covered the NIMBY half. We're gonna move to the YIMBY half.
But first, a word from our sponsor, Fume! So I started vaping ironically. Then, before I knew it, I was vaping unironically. Which I guess the phrase would be I was vaping post-ironically in this case. I thought I would never escape the destructive vice of vaping before I stumbled upon Fume! Oh, what's this? I can't fume to this! If you hit it really hard, you break through. Oh, lavender! Oh, peach cinnamon! And it's a straw. One thing Fume taught me is that vaping, it's mostly an oral fixation. And if you're just giving your mouth something to do, it's not about quitting though. It's about replacing. So that you can continually consume something. That's basically what it's for. This is so good. Oh, I'm fuming! Fume offers a simple and enjoyable way to break away from whatever bad habit that might be. Over 500,000 people have made the switch. I don't know if they switched or if they just bought it and they failed their task.
Just 500.
500,000, that's a big number. If you're ready to try it, now is the time. For a limited time, if you order the Journey Pack using my code DRAG, you'll get a free Fume topper! Yeah! That's this rubber thing.
Oh, the topper.
You'll get a topper.
So
Okay.
should we start with Left-Yimby or Right-Yimby? Maybe Right-Yimby makes more
Sure,
sense.
yeah. We started with
So I have here pure polyevra. I'm wondering what you think about this. I think pure from my this is just purely vibes based, but I feel like pure polyevra is a good example of a Right-Yimby. Best example I can think of, actually.
I think the most prominent example in Canada,
Yeah.
for sure. And yeah, they're all about, hey, let's cut the red tape on building homes. We need supply. Like, let the market do its thing. And I
Right.
think that's kind of their primary sort of view of why we have this housing crisis is we just built up way too much regulatory red tape around the supply of housing.
Yeah.
I don't know if this would be fair to ascribe to Pierre, but I think there is sort of like what type of supply are we talking about seems to kind of be the delineator between leftist Yimbyism and right Yimbyism, which is like, I think about like, Doug Ford, where I think in many ways he was a very pro-supply kind of person, right Yimby, but that means opening up the green belt and allowing a lot more sprawl to happen.
Like, I do want to build more. We're going to build in that one little pocket of green space you have. That beautiful little pocket that provides value to everybody. That's gone. Pave it over. I know one of Pierre's policies, and I found this very interesting because it wasn't a traditional right-wing policy. It was like, I'm going to give you a number of houses you have to build. And if you don't build that number of houses, you're not getting funding. That's like Maoist. That's like authoritarian.
That is,
but I kind of like it. I kind of like that idea.
Yeah, maybe we need another quadrant that's like authoritarian versus whatever.
It could be 3D. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think, but I've seen that happen. No, actually, yeah. No, man, I'm not. No, admittedly, we might have to cut this out because I'm not a very great commentator on politics. But there is for sure like a sort of a spectrum at which like senior, because like a lot of housing regulation is tied up in local municipal politics and regulations, which senior levels of government do have influence over through infrastructure funding or through provincial governments. They literally like allow municipalities to exist, so they can, Ontario does it all the time. They'll literally go in and be like, hey, no, you cut that rule out, no, overruled that decision. And I think there is definitely a spectrum of, how much those senior levels of government are willing to use a stick or a carrot or to really intervene and have an authoritarian approach, or more of a sort of let's play friendly and kind of do this collaboratively.
Okay,
approach.
Interesting. That seems more like a stick approach to me.
For sure.
But I guess a carrot approach would be like, I'm going to give the provinces bonuses for building.
Yes. The Housing Accelerator Fund being a good example from the last Liberal government.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, interesting. Cool. This I don't know if you know this, but this is the Georgist flag. Yellow and green.
Oh, okay.
And this is my land. I will decide its best use. So it's like this strikes me as like a cut regulations thing. I can do whatever I want on my land.
Yep.
And then, is this even a NIMBY versus YIMBY meme? Is this related? I really put it there because it's the Georgist flag, and I don't know where you would put Georgism on the spectrum.
I think the sort of deciding its best use part of Georgism is a right-Yimby thing. I think the land value taxation side of Georgism is a left-Yimby thing.
Okay.
I think there is sort of a weird. I think actually this is kind of appropriately placed here, kind of closer to the right-wing NIMBYism, because there is this kind of tension or perhaps contradiction within this property rights framework.
Yeah.
Which you can kind of go both YIMBY or NIMBY on.
Right.
If you can be like on the NIMBY perspective, hey, like, why do we have rules for what people should do with their properties that they own? Like, they own it, you should give them the freedom to let them develop what they want. But there's also a sort of line of property rights that is also, hey, like, this is my property, and the reality is, like, what my neighbors do around me affects my property. And so protecting my property rights also means kind of coming to some sort of consensus around, stabilizing what this neighborhood is.
So it all ends up going back to the homeowners association over here.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah. So I think there is sort of this tension there too. Like, I don't think it's as simple as like, hey, like, if you care about property rights, you're a YIMBY. I think it's a bit more complicated.
Yeah. Okay. I think I will move this like closer over here, but still on the right-Yimby.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. I also have like the Cato Institute. They're like a libertarian institute. Like, libertarians, they don't like government regulation. They want to cut it. And then land rights, but you, like, you know, you're an individual, so you only have really rights over your own land, and then people can do whatever they want. Like let the free market rule.
And I think that is, you're right to put it a little bit more towards the leftist YIMBY too, because I think there is some shared acknowledgement that the market is the market. And like, the laws of supply and demand are not, like, you know, manipulable. Or you know what I mean? Like, it's like, it's a law. Like, it's like like a physics law, right? Like, if there's a lot of demand and there's not enough supply, it's gonna be more expensive. And I think there's definitely, you know, sort of a recognition of that.
Okay. This seems to me to be like a right-Yimby complaining about left-Nimbys. Like, zoning is bad. It's not land theft if it's on an official map. The evil government is coming in and trying to tell you how things work, and he's actually like robbing you.
Right. So just generally more of like zoning at its very core was an infringement on my property rights. Yeah. Okay. So I think that's definitely also like that kind of libertarian sort of thinking around land.
Okay, cool. Here in the center YIMBY, I have a nice little comic. This town ain't big enough for the two of us. Afraid you're right. And then they team up and they build a house. And it's like the left-Yimbys and the right-Yimbys coming together and building a nice little house.
You know, again, boiling down the problem to like, hey, like, if there's demand for housing, we should build that housing.
So finally, the left-Yimby. So Ezra Klein, this guy, this I associate him with left-Yimbyism, and I because he's got this book called Abundance,
right?
And that's very big in the political world. A lot of people are talking about that. Yeah, his idea is like, you know, we're a liberal society, and we have the tools to be a great society, and all we need to do is like build more, and how we can fix the housing problem by sort of overthrowing the gerontocracy and building a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about Ezra Klein?
I'll fully admit I haven't read Abundance.
Okay. I haven't read. Look, I haven't read shit. Okay.
Which makes me very qualified to talk about his.
Oh, I feel Look, on the internet, you're actually qualified to talk about anything without reading, because people want you to wildly posit with no information. That's actually what does the best.
That's good for retention. Yeah. Well, but I think like the way you framed it just now, I mean, that's kind of how I understand the sort of the thesis of Abundance too, is it is this sort of hopeful message of like, hey, our sort of, you know, and I guess what the leftist YIMBY mindset is like, we can sort of marry progressive values and ideals with sort of, you know, an acknowledgement of the market and how that works, and working within our sort of, you know, market/capitalist framework, we can produce sort of the outcomes that we believe to be sort of progressive and more justice oriented.
Okay. I'm doing this show in New York soon. We're called the Anti-Clanker Manifesto, and we're speaking about robots and how we need to kill all robots. Robocide. So apparently I saw like AOC was promoting some YIMBY policies, and she's obviously a leftist.
Cool.
I saw this tweet, and it was like, so basically NIMBY spent $3,500 on ugly boulders to prevent unhoused people from existing in their neighborhood. You can tell they're a leftist because they use the word unhoused and because they care about homeless people at all. And so basically they like communally got together and
Yeah,
moved the rock somewhere else.
beautiful.
That's left. Is that Left-Yimby? It's definitely left anti-NIMBY.
I was gonna say maybe it's sort of like NIMBY in the sense of like NIMBY, not no home anti-homeless infrastructure in my backyard.
Right, anti-homeless
But
infrastructure.
but I think like the heart's in the right place. I mean, I think there is sort of this like on both the leftist NIMBY and YIMBY side, like, hey, neighbors should be diverse. Less affluent people with more affluent people, and kind of having a mix of incomes is, you know, not just a not bad thing, but actually
good
perhaps
thing.
a desirable
Yeah.
thing to have. And there's a lot of sort of eclecticness and and vibrancy that happens when you have like people from all different backgrounds and walks of life together.
Here's the only anti-Left-Yimby thing I could
Okay.
find. So it's a Halloween costume. Urbanist troll, a leftist NIMBY is making this to dunk on leftist YIMBYs.
I got a little fixated on the photos here, man.
Yeah, because
Poor
okay,
folk.
you're like because you're this yuppie liberal guy, and you like they're basically the leftist is accusing you of like, you know, oh, you love the free market. Oh, I bet you love Reagan's trickle down economics. I bet you have a pocket edition of Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. So basically, like these leftist NIMBYs would look at someone like Ezra Klein and be like, oh, you're basically just being like a capitalist. You're just
You're a
like
wolf in
capitalist
sheep's
shill.
clothing.
Yeah,
I think is something.
and like
yeah.
to call you on the left is ridiculous because like you just want the market to have its way with us.
Leftist YIMBYs, their big challenge is how do you differentiate? How do you like still make the case for your like progressive values?
Yeah.
Around the diversity of neighbors is good, in this sort of more capitalist market-driven framework. And I sort of mentioned the whole like, you know, a core belief of leftist YIMBYs is like diversity of neighbors is a good thing. Well, I think the reality on the ground is, you know, market forces usually create, you know, stratification of neighborhoods, right? Like because it's very difficult to have a market-based like affordable housing right next to like expensive housing, unless it's like literally like rooming houses, SROs, and like mansions.
So it's a nice theory to be able to like have a bunch of different income groups living in the same physical area, but in practice, the market stratifies.
Would the market actually do that? I'm a bit more skeptical of that, admittedly.
Yeah.
But I think to their credit, they would be also pro social housing and affordable housing. So there is sort of this acknowledgement of, hey, the market won't produce everything.
Right.
So because of that, let's also be YIMBY, yes, in my backyard, to your co-ops and your, you know, supportive housing projects, and that's kind of you know, something that would be supported here too.
The way I'm seeing it is like these guys are like full free market. Let's actually let the market have our way with have its way with us in whatever way that ends up being. These guys are like, let's let the market do its thing, and then let's like come in here and build some social housing here and there.
Yeah, I think that's probably the strongest differentiator between leftist YIMBYs and right YIMBYs is like the support for non-market housing, public, you know, the public sector getting involved in housing too.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And then these guys are even kind of like less pro market than the left YIMBY. They're just like I'm like the whatever has to happen in my interest to keep my property.
Yes, they're pro market in the sense of like the market being that.
Yeah.
You know, I want my market to go up.
I call it market solipsism. Solipsism is this idea where you think you're the only person that exists. It's like a philosophy where no one else is real but me.
Right. Everyone else is an externality.
And then these guys are the most anti-market, it seems. Like they're both communists and they're very skeptical of the free market, and they're doing sort of Maoist purge of like Ezra Klein. They're like, no, Ezra Klein, you don't call yourself a leftist. You're not a real leftist.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's we did it. We circled our way through.
I have in the very middle. It's this comic of so you know the political compass.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah, so this is like like the right wingers, and they're pulling a rope, and they look to the left, and there's like other left wingers, and they're YIMBYs. And then he's pulling the rope against everyone on the same, like that's also left wingers and also right wingers, and they're NIMBYs. And he's like, what? Like all of like basically every political ideology is on my side, and every political ideology is against me. This is one of these things that like you see, and for example, like being anti-robot right now, there's people from like the left, the right, the authoritarian spectrum, the libertarian spectrum, who are both pro and anti, and it's like this new sort of realignment that you can like draw connections between.
I think if you what you're saying is like this sort of housing politics kind of breaks the traditional mold of politics, and I would largely agree with that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of like, because I'm coming from the ideological world, it's like all these things are like pure in your mind, but when it comes to specific policy, then you do find yourself making these odd coalitions. I'll show you this horseshoe. Okay. Oh yeah, I did put this one in here. Like left wingers protecting
there we go.
the right-Yimbys. Here's another political compass. So this is the authoritarian left. This is like typically a communist, and it's like he hates the NIMBY because you drive up living costs for the working class. The conservative is like, you make it harder to get a house, to raise a family. You know, social conservatives are over here.
Okay, sure.
You use zoning laws to keep minorities poor. That's the traditional progressive. And then you worsen the energy crisis by shutting down nuclear. I don't really understand that one, but
yeah, that feels like it almost. Well, I mean, I guess it's nuclear, so sure, maybe that is a bit more of a right-wing thing.
But also, just NIMBY. What I would put here is like NIMBYism is anti-free market, and this guy loves the free market.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I also have income and luxury housing supply applies downward pressure on rent prices and reduces displacement of low-income earners.
Oh yeah.
And then both NIMBYs, which I think like Right-Nimby, and anti-gentrification activists, which is Left-Nimbys. If these kids could understand, I think this is a supply and demand chart. They'd be very upset. So like basically the idea is like NIMBYs just don't fundamentally understand how the basics of the market works.
I think it would be. I mean, the accusation is probably more directed towards the leftist NIMBYs. I think maybe the right sort of conservative NIMBYs are more fully aware of how the market works, but just are using it in their own sort of self-interest.
Right. Okay. So yeah, this is the this horseshoe, this Horseshoe Coalition. I just have two last questions. One, can you give me an example of anything that you've seen where leftist and right wingers have teamed up for like a NIMBY?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've got an example really fresh in my mind. So I live in Vancouver, and we just had a by-election earlier last year, and this was the first time I noticed it. But there was a coalition of leftist NIMBYs who were really concerned about renters being displaced because of these new apartment towers, and what I would call like those conservative NIMBYs that are much more about like protecting the character of the neighborhood, protecting sort of these heritage homes and the whatever. And they flew under the banner Team, which is a callback to an old party. I think it was the first time I'd seen sort of a political coalition form out of both groups.
Right.
And it was kind of interesting as a platform. I was just really intrigued by it. Like they had two candidates for this by-election because we were electing two councillors, and one of them was a former councillor named Colleen Hardwick, who is your kind of stereotypical older resident and very much about like, hey, there's an integrity to these neighbors, let's protect them.
Right-Yimby boomer.
Yes, thank you, Craig. But then they also had like a really young.
Sorry, Right-Nimby boomer.
Right-Nimby. You're right. Yeah.
These are confusing terms because they're all the same.
It's just a little slip of the tongue. And,
Okay. So Colleen.
Colleen was one of the candidates they ran.
Yeah.
But then the other candidate they ran was this really young sort of renters activist called I think his name was Theodore Abbott. And like he's like kind of around our age, and his whole thing was like I live along the Broadway corridor, and the city upzoned that neighborhood recently. We're seeing all these development signs, and we're scared. And I think there was this kind of, I think, testing of the waters. I mean, admittedly, I'm not sure. I think a lot of Vancouver voters kind of saw through the contradictions in the platform.
They're playing both sides.
Yeah, so ultimately it didn't work out, but I'd be kind of curious if other parties are able to pull it off a little bit more successfully.
Very interesting. Yeah. Okay. So that's one example of horseshoe theory on the NIMBY side.
Yes.
Can you give me an example of a horseshoe theory on the Yimby side?
Yimby side?
And I what I'll say is just noticed online there's like so many like Left-Yimbys and Right-Yimbys posting, like they're unified in their absolute hatred of anyone advocating for like more zoning shit.
I mean, sure, maybe Reddit is a good example of the
the
Right-Yimby, the internet, and I think I don't know, I kind of I feel like, I mean, like, again, my sympathies are a bit more with the leftist Yimby.
Yeah.
So I think the internet has, really been a great place for discourse for these sort of Yimby groups to come together. Because, like we were talking about before, like NIMBYism tends to manifest more as like, community residents organizing and rallying for their community. And I think internet discourse is a little bit more disparate. It's like people kind of living all around Vancouver that are now commenting and cluing into the city's, restrictive zoning policies and kind of getting fired up about it and finding their own community, not around a geographic area, but around like a more broader cause.
Well, that's very fitting for people who don't like the look, like they're like the locality. Introverts. Yes. You take the locality out of it, and then you make your communities cross like online because the NIMBYs are so focused on the locality.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense that their locality is on the internet anyway.
No, I think that's I think that's one sort of like, I don't want to call it a rift, but like I think that's another way to like differentiate kind of between these different coalitions. I haven't seen a political party really unify the right and the left around a Yimby agenda.
But I feel like we'll see that because there's so much demand for it and among young people.
I think I mean, yeah, we'll see. And I think, if anything, like I think like the liberals in Canada or like like sort of these sort of like progressives that like to kind of say that they're in the middle of the political spectrum are trying to do that. They're trying to, of course, court, some of those right-wing like conservatives that are maybe a little bit scared about the identity politics of the extreme right and are saying, hey, we won't subscribe to the whole like, some of those more extreme views, but we will respect the market and we will respect the role of the market in housing policy.
Liberalism.
At the same time, they're trying to court the left in the sense of like, hey, like progressivism actually does fit into a
left liberalism.
Sort of framework. Yeah.
Okay, here's my pitch. Okay. We'll do the opposite of team. We call it MEAT. MEAT.
Okay.
And or maybe MEET. And it's like instead of like making a team between the left and right NIMBYs, we'll do a meetup between the left and right Yimbys. And then we'll run two candidates, like a anarcho-capitalist libertarian fundamentalist and like an anarcho-communist sort of like left Yimby liberal, like with like liberal appeal. And then the team will be defeated by MEAT.
Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah.
Okay, very cool.
Sounds like a fitting response.
All right, lovely. So that's it.
Okay.
So if we could take out one of these quadrants to make the world a better place, which one would it be? Which one are we killing?
Oh gosh, Greg, I hate doing this.
I know. I'm just trying to torture you now.
I know. Let me think about this. I mean, okay, maybe this is a very predictable opinion. I think it is, to me, the top right quadrant.
Get out of here!
Well, here's what I'll say is like, I think these are valid perspectives to have in a city.
Yeah.
And this like and the reality of a city is we're living with people. To me it feels irresponsible to have a perspective that is so individually focused and at the cost of everything kind of outside of your property line because that is just not what being in a city is about. Like listen, we signed up for civilization. This is our social contract. We have to negotiate how we're going to grow and like morph and add population.
Yeah.
Like if you want to, like this is the type of perspective, like if you want to go to the most rural parts of the country and live in, your cottage, like go to Alaska, like this is the ideology that I can kind of sympathize with there. But like in an urban area, like I wouldn't be encouraging people to have this sort of worldview that is like, it's my property against
the world,
change the world, everything.
Okay. Okay. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm satisfied with that.
Okay.
Boomers, be afraid, be scared. Right-Yimbys, we're coming for you. The day of the pillow is approaching. Boomers, you better be afraid.
Greg, what have you wrote me into?